On November 29, 2025, U.S. President Donald Trump crossed a historic threshold. On Truth Social, he declared that Venezuela's airspace was now completely closed, an announcement that marks a major geopolitical turning point. For the first time since 1953, the ability of the United States to unilaterally impose its will in the skies is facing coordinated, global-scale resistance. This declaration comes in an extremely volatile context. Since August 2025, Washington has deployed what analysts describe as the largest U.S. military presence in the Caribbean since Operation Uphold Democracy in Haiti in 1994. In concrete terms, 15,000 U.S. troops, the aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford, the largest in the world, 8 warships, including a nuclear-powered attack submarine, B-52 and B-1B bombers, as well as F-35 fighter jets stationed in Puerto Rico. Officially, this operation, named Southern Spear, is intended to combat drug trafficking, but the facts raise serious questions. According to Human Rights Watch, 26 military strikes were carried out against vessels allegedly transporting drugs, resulting in the deaths of 95 people, without any victims being formally identified and without publicly presented evidence. The organization denounces what it describes as extrajudicial executions carried out without a credible legal basis. Yet despite this massive show of force, Donald Trump can only declare Venezuela's airspace closed without being able to truly enforce it. As explained by Oscar Palma, a security expert at the University of Rosario in Colombia, enforcing an airspace ban requires the capability, availability, and above all, the willingness to shoot down any aircraft that violates it. Is the U.S. president truly prepared to apply such a rule by force? The answer appears to be no, because such an action would formally constitute an act of war requiring approval from the U.S. Congress. In the current geopolitical climate, with alliances tightening around Caracas, such an escalation could have unpredictable consequences. The impact of this declaration was immediate and counterproductive for Washington. Even before Trump's announcement, the Federal Aviation Administration had issued a warning on November 21st regarding the risks of flying over Venezuela and the Southern Caribbean, citing a deterioration in the security situation and increased military activity. The result was a cascade of flight suspensions. Iberia, TAP Portugal, Turkish Airlines, Avianca, LATAM, Air Europa, and Plus Ultra all halted operations. Venezuela responded by revoking their operating licenses, accusing these airlines of joining what it calls Washington's state-sponsored terrorism. In early December 2025, the last remaining carriers suspended their flights. Copa Airlines and its subsidiary Wingo halted services on December 4th and 5, citing intermittent navigation signal issues. Satana and Boliviana de Aviación followed the same day. At that point, Maiquetía International Airport in Caracas was handling only 4 departures and 3 arrivals per day, all operated by Venezuelan airlines to Curaçao, Havana, and Bogotá. But this isolation affects civilians far more than the government of Nicolás Maduro. The 2.8 million Venezuelans living in Colombia, the largest Venezuelan diaspora in the world, have been cut off from their families during the end-of-year holiday season. Juan Carlos Viloria Doria, vice president of the Association Venezuelans in Barranquilla, explains, "Many people have shared their concerns about the cancellation of these flights. At this time of year, people want to reunite with their families and friends for Christmas. A striking irony remains. The only authorized flights are those repatriating migrants expelled by the United States back to Venezuela, highlighting the contradictions of U.S. policy. This closure has triggered a diplomatic shockwave far beyond Latin America. Colombian President Gustavo Petro, who currently chairs the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, posed a blunt question on social media platform X. I would like to know under which rule of international law the president of one country can close the airspace of another nation. If that is possible, then national sovereignty and international law no longer exist." This stance from a traditional U.S. ally marks a turning point. Even governments opposed to Maduro are expressing discomfort with what they perceive as a return to 20th century interventionism. For its part, Venezuela condemned what it described as a colonialist threat to the sovereignty of its airspace, calling it an extravagant, illegal, and unjustified act of aggression against the Venezuelan people. Nicolás Maduro called on the United Nations and the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons to condemn Trump's declaration. This standoff reveals a historic shift. Since the end of World War II, and especially since the Korean War in 1953, the United States has exercised near-total dominance over contested airspace. But in the case of Venezuela, Washington is discovering that imposing a no-fly zone requires far more than declarations or naval deployments. And this is where the true geopolitical revolution of December 2025 lies. For the first time in decades, U.S. adversaries are openly coordinating their actions. Russia, China, and Iran are strengthening their strategic cooperation with Caracas, making any U.S. military operation extremely costly and politically risky. The conclusion is clear: air supremacy cannot be declared into existence. Faced with coordinated adversaries, backed by nuclear powers and equipped with modern air defense systems, enforcing such dominance becomes a high-risk gamble, one that even Donald Trump appears reluctant to take. The real issue goes far beyond Venezuela. It concerns the ability of the United States to project military power in a multipolar world, where adversaries are no longer isolated, where defensive technologies are spreading rapidly, and where unilateral interventions face growing diplomatic resistance, including from long-standing allies. 70 years after establishing its dominance in the skies, the United States is discovering that this supremacy was never permanent. Declaring an airspace closed is no longer enough to actually close it. Venezuela's sky remains open for those willing to challenge the declaration. If you found this analysis useful, subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, and share your perspective in the comments.